There was so much that was drilled into you through what he said about trying to please your husband, and if you don't, he's going to leave you. Jinger Duggar Vuolo is reflecting on the hard parts of her upbringing. The Counting on Alum 31 was raised in the controversial ultra-Christian organization, the Institute in Basic Life Principles, IBLP. In recent years, Jinger has been outspoken against IBLP's teachings and its minister, Bill Gothard. Reflecting on the impact being in IBLP had on her life, especially with the release of her new book, People Pleaser. Breaking free from the burden of imaginary expectations, Jinger now recognizes how it contributed to the false belief she had that she was not enough. I will just say a lot of it started when I was in the teachings of Bill Gothard, because there was so much that was drilled into you through what he said about trying to please your husband, and if you don't, he's going to leave you, because you don't have a perfectly clean house, or maybe you don't make the dinner on time, or you're not joyfully available to him at all times. She tells people exclusively. It was also focused on, do this, do this, do this, do this, otherwise, you're not going to be enough for him. Even having differences, because arguments don't equal rejection, and that's something that I've learned over the years, she says. Jinger credits her husband Jeremy Vuolo, with whom she shares 2 daughters and is currently expecting a 3rd child, for having helped me learn that because he's so amazing, she says. When we were first married, he would say, "Where do you want to go to dinner?" And I'd be like, "It's okay, babe. Wherever you want to go is fine," because I could never tell him what I was actually thinking out of fear of. Those teachings kept coming back to mind, just have it all together for him, she explains. He was like, "No, this is ridiculous. I want to know who Jinger is." The 19 Kids and Counting alum continues. He wanted to know who I truly was. He pushed me to be vulnerable. He wanted to hear what I was thinking. Even if he said something that I disagreed with, he was like, "Tell me what you think, Jinge." "I don't care," he said. "I want to hear even if we have different opinions." Doing so was something she initially regarded as something that was hard for me to do, she says. It took me years to come to the place where I felt I was actually speaking my mind and able to open up. He was so good about that, and to this day, he just continues to want me to grow, challenge me to be myself, and push me to be my best. Jinger hopes that her new book, People Pleaser, helps others realize their own issues with the matter to aid in their respective journeys to resolve the problem. I think anytime you open up, anytime you share, especially as a people pleaser, once it's out there, and you can't take it back, she shares. Some of the stories I share are very raw and are very real. People can take them as they will. In my mind, I was like, okay, I want to be as open and vulnerable as I can be, because that is part of the need that we see. Jinger Duggar Vuolo's journey is one of personal transformation, one that has captivated audiences since she first appeared on 19 Kids and Counting. As one of the more prominent members of the Duggar family, Jinger's life has been heavily shaped by the strict teachings of her family and their church. Over the years, however, Jinger has found the courage to reflect on and challenge some of the beliefs that once dominated her worldview. In an exclusive interview, she opens up about how the teachings from her former church instilled a belief that she was never enough and how this idea was repeatedly drilled into her throughout her upbringing. Jinger's story is far from unique. Many individuals who grow up in ultra-conservative environments, especially within religious communities that emphasize strict gender roles, face a similar internal struggle. From a young age, Jinger, like her siblings, was raised in a world where modesty, obedience, and submission to authority were paramount. The church and her family reinforced these values daily, often portraying them as the key to a righteous life. Yet, as Jinger grew older, she began to realize that the very principles she had been taught to live by were also fostering a sense of inadequacy and self-doubt that weighed heavily on her. The church's teachings, a foundation of fear and perfectionism. For Jinger, The church she attended during her childhood and adolescence was not just a place of worship, it was the lens through which she viewed the world. The teachings she absorbed were ingrained in her daily life, shaping her understanding of her purpose, her worth, and her role in society. It wasn't just about following rules, it was about pleasing God, Jinger explains. There was this constant pressure to be perfect, to do everything just right. It felt like you were never enough, no matter how hard you tried. The perfectionist mentality permeated almost every aspect of Jinger's upbringing. It was about more than just outward behaviors, like dressing modestly or maintaining a strict schedule of prayer. It was about an internalized sense of never measuring up. You were constantly told that if you weren't doing things the right way, then you were failing, Jinger reflects. And that failure wasn't just a personal shortcoming, it was a spiritual one. It made you feel like you were always falling short. As a young girl, Jinger internalized this message. Every mistake or imperfection was seen as a reflection of her inadequacy. Her identity became entangled with the idea that she had to perform perfectly to earn love, approval, and acceptance, not only from her family, but from God. And when mistakes inevitably happened, she was taught that these failures could lead to shame and guilt, further reinforcing her belief that she was never enough. The teachings of the church often revolved around notions of submission, particularly when it came to women's roles. For women in this environment, worth was tied to serving others, submitting to male authority figures, and fulfilling a specific role within the family. The idea of women as passive, subordinate beings was woven deeply into the fabric of Jinger's religious experience. Her worth was not seen as inherent, but as something to be earned through adherence to these standards. The constant repetition of these messages led Jinger to believe that her identity was ultimately defined by her ability to meet external expectations, leaving little room for self-acceptance or exploration of who she truly was. Breaking free from the burden of perfectionism. When Jinger married Jeremy Vuolo in 2016, her life began to change in profound ways. While her upbringing had encouraged obedience and conformity, marriage presented her with the opportunity to break free from the rigid confines of her past. Jeremy, who had grown up in a less restrictive environment, was a source of support and encouragement for Jinger as she navigated her personal evolution. Together, they moved away from the small, insular world of the Duggar family and into a broader, more diverse setting. Their decision to relocate to Laredo, Texas, and later Los Angeles marked a clear shift in Jinger's life. For the first time, she was able to live independently of the rules and expectations that had shaped her childhood. This newfound freedom allowed Jinger to question everything she had been taught, to reconsider the beliefs that once felt so absolute. It wasn't an easy process. As Jinger herself admits, it took time to unravel the years of programming that had been drilled into her. It was hard at first, she explains. For so long, I believed that my worth was tied to these teachings. If I didn't measure up, then I wasn't valuable. But over time, I started to see that I could still be loved and accepted, even if I didn't always get things right. Jinger's journey towards self-acceptance has been an ongoing process, one marked by deep reflection and personal growth. It has involved challenging her previous notions of perfection and learning to embrace her flaws and imperfections. I had to realize that I wasn't a failure for not fitting into these boxes. I had to accept that I am enough, just as I am, she shares, and that was a huge shift for me. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about being real. This process has also involved reassessing her role as a woman, both in her marriage and in the world. Jinger has often spoken about how her views on gender roles and submission have evolved. In her previous life, she was taught to submit to male authority without question, but as she grew more independent, she realized that true partnership in a marriage is built on mutual respect, equality, and collaboration. Jinger has spoken about how her marriage to Jeremy has been a transformative experience in this regard. Jeremy and I are partners. We work together. We both have our own strengths, and we lift each other up, she explains. It's not about one person being in charge. It's about mutual love and respect. Embracing her true self. Today, Jinger Duggar Vuolo is a far cry from the young woman who once felt like she would never be enough. Through her marriage, her personal growth, and her willingness to question the teachings of her past, she has found a new sense of identity that is not defined by external standards, but by her own values and self-worth. The perfectionism that once consumed her is no longer the driving force in her life. Instead, she embraces her humanity, the messy, imperfect, and beautiful reality of being fully herself. In her book, Becoming Free Indeed, Jinger opens up about these experiences in greater detail, sharing her journey of overcoming the limiting beliefs instilled in her by her former church. The book serves as a powerful reminder that breaking free from the shackles of perfectionism and external validation is not just liberating, it's necessary for true self-discovery and happiness. Jinger's story is one of resilience, growth, and the ongoing process of healing from the emotional and psychological toll of a belief system that taught her she was never enough. But now she stands as a testament to the power of embracing imperfection and finding strength in one's own identity. Through her journey, Jinger has shown that true freedom comes not from adhering to rigid expectations, but from the courage to accept oneself fully, flaws and all.